All right, so you've spent weeks, maybe even months, buried in the theories of change management. You know all the big names, Kotter, Lewin, you name it. But here's the real question. How do you actually do it? This explainer is all about bridging that gap, moving from theory to real-world practice. We're going to walk through a simple 6-step framework designed to turn all that textbook knowledge into an actual skill, which is perfect for nailing that final exam and, let's be honest, for becoming a change manager that people actually want to work with.
So, you've done it. You've finished the course, you've absorbed all the models and the concepts. Now what? The next step isn't about cramming another theory. It's about managing your own personal transition from someone who studies change to someone who leads it. It's about getting all those great ideas off the page and into your day-to-day reality.
And the answer to that challenge is having a clear, practical framework to guide you on that journey. So, don't think of this as just another study guide. Think of it as your personal development plan for really mastering the art and science of change management.
To get there, we've got a 6-step roadmap. We'll start with knowing your starting point and accepting that this stuff is complex. Then we'll talk about breaking it down, staying focused, building a plan, and finally, creating a feedback loop so you know you're on the right track. Let's get into it.
This right here, this is the path we're going to follow. See how each step builds on the last? This is how you're going to move from just knowing the theory to practicing it with real confidence.
Okay, let's dive in with step 1. Know your starting point. It's simple, really. Before you can figure out where you're going, you have to be brutally honest about where you're standing right now. What's your natural go-to management style? This is your personal baseline.
You can think of management styles as being on a spectrum. Over on one end, you've got the autocratic style. It's very top-down, pretty exclusive, very directive. Then way on the other end, you have the democratic style, which is all about engagement, being inclusive, and collaboration. So where do you naturally fall? And more importantly, are you able to shift along that spectrum when you need to? Nailing this down is absolutely the first step.
Now for step 2, and this one is a big mindset shift, you have to accept the complexity. Reading about change management in a book is one thing, but actually doing it out in the wild? Well, that's a whole different ballgame. There's a great analogy for this. It's kind of like watching a YouTube video of a professional dancing the salsa. It looks so smooth, so effortless, right? But the second you try to step onto the dance floor yourself, you realize just how much is going on. The footwork, the rhythm, leading your partner. Becoming a great change manager, it's even more complex than that.
And just look at why it's so complex. You're not just doing one thing. You're trying to blend models from Lewin and Kotter. You have to get the psychology right, create a vision, deal with resistance. Look at this list. There are so many moving parts to keep track of at the same time.
So if it's that complicated, where to even start? Well, that brings us to step 3, break down the process. If you try to do everything at once, you are just setting yourself up for failure and frustration. The secret is to make it manageable by tackling it one piece at a time. The strategy here is exactly the same one a musician uses to learn a new, really difficult piece of music. They don't try to play the whole thing perfectly the first time through. No way! They break it down, they practice that first measure until they've got it, then they practice the second. Then they put those two together. You build your skill and your confidence measure by measure. And that whole measure by measure idea leads us right into step 4. Be selective. Be focused. You simply can't work on everything at once. So you have to make a conscious choice to pick just one, specific area and pour all your energy into that.
For instance, let's say the skill you decide to focus on is engagement. What does that actually look like day to day? Well, it means you make it a point to bring people together before a project even kicks off to talk about the vision. It means that during the process, you're actively asking them how it's going, you're really listening to what they say, and you're actually making changes based on their feedback. See, you pick one skill and then you practice it intentionally.
And that leads us perfectly to step 5. Establish your plan. Look, good intentions are nice, but they're not enough. Real progress needs a real plan. Becoming a better change manager takes serious commitment, and maybe even more important, it takes time. If you expect to be an expert overnight, you're just going to get frustrated.
So what does a realistic plan look like? You really need to give yourself at least a few weeks, maybe even several months, to practice just one skill before you even think about moving on. And this isn't about being slow, it's about being effective. It takes time for a new skill to sink in and become second nature. So don't be impatient, stick with it, and you'll figure out what works for you.
And finally, we've arrived at step 6, create a feedback loop. This part is so critical. Without honest feedback, you have no idea if what you're practicing is actually working. You might feel like you're getting better at listening, but you need someone else's perspective to know for sure. So how do you get that valuable perspective? Simple. You ask for it. Don't just hope someone notices. Find a colleague you trust and be direct. You can use a script just like the one you see here. Hey Jody, I'm really trying to get better at listening to my group. Would you be willing to sit in on our next meeting and just give me some feedback afterward? It's direct, it's concrete, and it shows you're serious.
Okay, let's bring this all home. Becoming a truly effective change manager is hard work. You are going to face frustrations. There will be times you stumble, probably right after you thought you were finally getting it right.
But you cannot lose sight of the rewards. Mastering this stuff brings this incredible self-satisfaction. You get a real sense of personal growth, of organizational accomplishment. And let's be real, in a world where change is the only constant, you become an incredibly valuable asset to absolutely any team or organization. So as you get ready for your exams and for the next stage of your career, please remember this. Those frustrations, those disappointments, they aren't signs that you're failing. They are a non-negotiable part of the learning process. The real test isn't if you'll face them, but what you choose to build from them when you do. So the only question left is, which skill are you going to start practicing today?